When my mother-in-law died, my husband refused to attend her funeral. Why? It's your mother's final goodbye. I couldn't understand. Just stay home. In a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of San Diego, California, a single-story house surrounded by a white picket fence stood quietly. Every first Sunday of the month, this house would fill with the warm laughter of family. This was Dorothy Thompson's home. "Emma, could you help me with that casserole?" Hearing the voice from the kitchen, Emma smiled and stood up. She worked as a nurse at the local general hospital, but treasured the time she spent with her mother-in-law above all else. Though she had been married for 5 years, Dorothy had treated her like a real daughter from the very beginning. As Emma received the steaming casserole dish, she admired Dorothy's efficiency. Her movements were quick and precise, and her cooking skills were acknowledged by everyone in the family. With her graying hair neatly arranged and wearing an apron, she truly embodied the ideal mother figure. "Michael, is the table setting ready?" Her husband's voice came back from the living room. "Almost finished." Michael worked in design at a local aerospace company. Tall with a gentle personality, he was known for being devoted to his mother. Even after graduating from college, he had chosen to live near his childhood home, and after marriage, he continued to visit his mother every week. The front door burst open with energy. "I'm home. Sorry I'm late." Jessica's cheerful voice echoed throughout the house. She worked as a sales clerk at a boutique downtown. 3 years ago, after her divorce, she had moved back home and continued living with her mother. "Jessie, welcome home. Was it busy today?" Emma called out, and Jessica answered with a smile despite looking tired. "Yes, especially since it's the weekend. But I'm expecting a good bonus at the end of the month." Jessica was conscious about her appearance and always wore fashionable clothes. She never spoke in detail about her divorce, but the family understood it was due to her ex-husband's infidelity. Since returning home, she had been taking good care of her mother, and Dorothy seemed genuinely happy about her daughter's return. "Everyone, please take your seats." Dorothy appeared in the dining room carrying a large platter. "I made roast beef especially for today." The four gathered around the round dining table. This scene had continued unchanged for 5 years. Dorothy's cooking was always exquisite, and though Emma tried to get recipes each time, Dorothy would just laugh and say, "It's years of intuition," never giving detailed instructions. "Your cooking is truly delicious, Mother. I hope I can learn to cook for my family like this someday." At Emma's words, Dorothy smiled happily. "Emma, you're already quite good. Michael is always bragging about you." Michael looked at his mother with embarrassment. "You don't have to say things like that, but it's true. You found yourself a wonderful wife." Jessica raised her wineglass. "Here's to Mother's cooking and Emma's dedicated work as a nurse. And to Michael's promotion too," Dorothy added. Last month, Michael had been promoted to chief engineer of his department. As the glasses clinked together, Emma once again felt the warmth of this family. Her own parents lived on the East Coast and she saw them only once a year, but at Dorothy's house, she could have family time like this every month. As the meal progressed, Jessica talked about her recent work. New designer brands have been coming in, and sales are doing well. But customer demands are getting more demanding too. "That must be tough." Dorothy looked at her daughter with concern. "Don't overdo it." "I'm fine. Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious." "Mom, by the way, how's Michael's new project going?" Michael briefly explained his work, but since it contained a lot of technical content, the women seemed interested but couldn't completely understand. Still, the family was genuinely happy about his success. When dessert time came, Dorothy brought out homemade apple pie. "This is Emma's favorite, isn't it? I'm truly happy. Even when I come home tired from the hospital, remembering this taste gives me energy." At Emma's words, everyone around the table showed warm smiles. Such casual conversations and thoughtfulness deepened this family's bonds. After dinner, the four spent time in the living room drinking coffee, watching TV, and sharing updates about their lives. When it got late and it was time for Michael and Emma to go home, Dorothy came out to the entrance to see them off as always. "Drive carefully. I'm looking forward to next week." In the car, Emma said to Michael, "Your mother is truly wonderful. We're so blessed." "That's right. Mom is our pride," Michael answered with satisfaction. On Monday morning, Emma had just returned home after finishing her night shift at the hospital. After taking a shower, just as she was about to lie down in bed, her cell phone rang loudly. Looking at the clock, it was 6:30 a.m. Someone calling this early in the morning must mean a real emergency. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. Emma answered the phone with a bad feeling. "Jessie? What's wrong? Calling so early?" From the other end of the phone, she could hear Jessica's trembling voice. "Emma, something terrible has happened." Mom collapsed. Emma felt as if her heart stopped for a moment. "What did you say? What do you mean?" "I called an ambulance." We're heading to St. Mary's Hospital right now. Please, come right away. Jessica's voice was shaking with tears. Emma instantly regained her composure as a nurse and tried to get details. Jessie, calm down. What was the situation? Was she conscious? When I woke up this morning and brought breakfast to Mom's room, she was collapsed beside her bed. She wouldn't respond when I called to her. The paramedics are doing CPR, but Emma was already changing clothes as she answered. I understand. I'll contact Michael too, and we'll head to the hospital right away. After hanging up, Emma shook Michael awake beside her. Michael, wake up. Your mother collapsed. We have to go to the hospital. Michael couldn't understand the situation for a moment, but seeing Emma's serious expression, he immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. Mom? Why? I don't know the details, but Jessica called an ambulance and she was taken to St. Mary's Hospital. The two quickly got ready and drove to the hospital. The usual 20-minute drive took over 30 minutes due to morning traffic. Michael kept checking the clock while driving. She was so healthy just yesterday, Michael murmured. I hope this is some kind of mistake. Emma gripped her husband's hand tightly. Your mother is a strong woman. I'm sure she'll be fine. However, anxiety was swirling in Emma's heart. Having experienced numerous emergencies as a nurse, she understood how serious an early morning cardiac arrest could be. When they arrived at the hospital, Jessica was crying uncontrollably in the waiting room. Her face was distorted with tears and worry. Jessie, Emma rushed over, and Jessica buried her face in the chest of her sister-in-law, whom she looked up to like a sister. Emma, the doctor won't tell me anything yet, just that the situation is serious. Michael went to the reception desk to inquire about his mother's condition. After a while, an emergency room doctor came over. The expression of the middle-aged male doctor in the white coat was heavy, and Emma instantly sensed the worst-case scenario. You're Mr. Thompson's family, aren't you? The doctor said quietly. Please sit down. With these words, Emma understood everything. Working as a nurse, she knew what it meant when doctors used this expression. I'm very sorry. Mrs. Dorothy Thompson passed away at 7:15 a.m. due to acute myocardial infarction. Jessica's scream echoed through the waiting room. That's a lie. That can't be true. She was so healthy just yesterday. Michael collapsed into a chair. His face lost all color, showing an expression of disbelief. The doctor continued with a sympathetic expression. It was a massive heart attack. It likely occurred during sleep. She probably felt very little pain. Emma suppressed her own emotions and tried to support the family using her experience as a nurse. However, she herself was struck by deep sadness. Dorothy had loved her like a real mother. Can we see her? Emma asked the doctor. Of course. However, there are some administrative procedures first. The next several hours were spent filling out paperwork and making phone calls. Michael's father had died 10 years ago, and they needed to contact Dorothy's siblings and relatives. Jessica was too emotional to make practical decisions. I want to decorate the funeral with Mom's favorite white roses, Jessica said while wiping away tears. Mom was always growing white roses in her garden. Emma nodded. Yes. I'm sure she would be happy about that. There were many things to do. Contacting the funeral home, notifying relatives of the death, contacting workplaces. Michael couldn't recover from the shock of his mother's death, but Emma and Jessica worked together to make the necessary arrangements. Let's hold the funeral Tuesday at 2 p.m., the funeral home representative suggested. Mrs. Dorothy was loved in the community. So many people will likely attend. Jessica decided the details of the funeral while sharing memories of her mother. Mom loved music, so I want them to sing Amazing Grace, and I want to distribute copies of Mom's apple pie recipe to the attendees. Emma was moved by her sister-in-law's suggestion. It would be a warm funeral that reflected Dorothy's character. That evening, the three returned to Dorothy's house. The usually bright home was now wrapped in silence. In the kitchen, the remains of the last dinner Dorothy had made were still there. I can still smell Mom's scent, Jessica cried in the kitchen. Mom was always cooking here. Michael went into his mother's bedroom and sat on the bed. I wonder if Mom suffered. Emma placed her hand on her husband's shoulder. The doctor said so, didn't he? She probably passed peacefully in her sleep. That night, the three looked at family photos and shared memories of Dorothy. Many of the photos from their 5 years of marriage had been taken by Emma. Monthly Sunday dinners, birthday parties, Christmas gatherings. In every photo, Dorothy was smiling. Mom was truly devoted to family, Jessica said while looking at the photos. When I came back after my divorce, she accepted me without asking any questions. She was the best mother for me too, Michael answered with a tearful voice. Even when I came home tired from work, just seeing Mom smile would energize me. Emma also shared her memories. I remember when I was first invited to Sunday dinner. I was nervous, and your mother said to me, "You've become family now." Those words made me so happy. The night before the funeral, the three finalized the arrangements for the next day. Greeting relatives, flower arrangements, Meal preparations. Everything was ready. Tomorrow, many people who loved Mom will surely come, Jessica said. Mom was truly loved. Emma and Michael nodded. Dorothy had been a beloved figure both as a former elementary school teacher and among the neighbors. Many people would surely come to say their final goodbye. Let's make tomorrow the best funeral for Mom, Emma said, looking at the two. A warm farewell that would make her proud. The three joined hands. The next morning, Emma was pulling up the zipper of her black dress while looking at her tired face in the mirror. The sleepless night had ended. Michael, are you ready? Emma called from the bedroom. And her husband answered while putting on his black suit. Almost finished. Emma was organizing the day's schedule in her head while applying lipstick at the vanity. Arrive at the funeral home at 10 a.m. to help greet relatives. The funeral would start at 2 p.m., followed by the burial service. A simple meal with family only in the evening. It would be a long day. Emma, Michael's voice was strangely quiet. I'm not going. Emma stopped her hand at the vanity. What did you say? I'm not going to Mom's funeral. Michael repeated in a tone as if he were talking about the weather while tying his necktie. Emma turned around. What are you saying? It's your mother's funeral. It's our last goodbye. I know, but I'm not going. Emma stared at her husband in disbelief. They had been preparing for the funeral together until last night. So why was he suddenly saying this? Michael, you're not thinking clearly. You're in shock and can't make normal judgments, Emma said gently, trying to reason with him. But we have to go for your mother's sake. Jessica and all the relatives are waiting for you. Michael turned toward Emma. His eyes held a seriousness she had never seen before. Just stay home. Trust me. Trust you about what? Emma's voice rose. Explain it to me. Why are you suddenly saying you won't go? I can't explain right now. But please, stay home today. Emma was filled with anger and confusion. What am I supposed to tell Jessica? I won't explain why, but we're not coming to the funeral. I can't say something like that. Michael stood by the window, looking outside. Tell Jessica some appropriate excuse. That I suddenly got sick or something. You want me to lie? Emma stood up and approached her husband. Michael, what's happening? You were normal until last night. Michael turned around and placed his hands on both of Emma's shoulders. Emma, trust me. I can't explain in detail right now, but you absolutely must not leave the house today. Emma looked into her husband's eyes. She could see what looked like fear lurking there. He knew something. Something serious. Does this have to do with your mother's death? Michael hesitated for a moment. It's possible. With these words, Emma's anger turned to anxiety. What do you mean? I'll explain later. Just trust me now. Emma's cell phone rang. It was Jessica. Emma, how are the preparations going? I'm already at the funeral home. I'm checking the flower arrangements, Emma answered while staring at Michael. Jessie, actually. Michael suddenly got sick. What? Is he okay? He seems to have a fever. I'm really sorry but we'll have to rest today. After hanging up, Emma felt disgusted with herself for lying. However, looking at Michael's serious expression, she couldn't help but feel there was some serious reason. The clock showed 9 a.m. They were supposed to arrive at the funeral home in 1 hour. Emma took off her black dress and changed into casual clothes. She still couldn't understand the situation, but decided to trust her husband. Michael, at least tell me what you're worried about. I'll talk later. Let's just stay quietly at home now. At 10 a.m., the reception should have started at the funeral home. Emma looked out the window while reflecting on her memories with Dorothy. Past noon, Michael was pretending to watch TV in the living room, but was actually looking outside the windows vigilantly. Emma was making tea in the kitchen, confused by this abnormal situation. 30 minutes before the funeral was to begin, Emma received a call from Jessica. Emma, how is Michael feeling? Can't he really come? Well, his fever still hasn't gone down. I'm really sorry. I understand. But could my brother-in-law at least say a final goodbye to Mom? Jessie, it's impossible right now. We'll definitely visit the grave later. After hanging up, Emma's chest ached with guilt. If Dorothy were alive, what would she think of this situation? At 2 p.m., Michael suddenly stood up and slightly opened the curtain to check outside. Michael, what exactly are you? Just then, the doorbell rang. Emma and Michael froze. The doorbell rang once, twice, 3 times continuously. Who could it be? As Emma started to get up, Michael stopped her with his hand. Absolutely do not open the door. Michael's voice was low and tense. Look through the peephole, but absolutely do not open the door. Emma cautiously approached the door. Her heart was beating violently. When she looked through the peephole, she saw a large man in a black suit standing at the entrance. The man had closely cropped hair and sharp eyes, and in his hand, he was gripping a small black bag. Michael, Emma's voice was shaking. There's a man in a black suit. He's carrying some kind of luggage. Michael's face turned pale. Just as I thought. Who is he? What is he carrying? The doorbell rang again. The man showed no signs of giving up and waited patiently. "Michael, do you know this person?" Michael was already holding his cell phone. His fingers dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? There's a possible break-in. Please send officers immediately. The address is... Emma listened to her husband's conversation while beginning to understand the seriousness of the situation. This wasn't just a visitor. This was someone dangerous. Lives are in danger. Please hurry, Michael told the phone, and Emma's blood ran cold. Michael, what's happening? Why are lives in danger? Footsteps could be heard outside the door. The man seemed to be walking around the house. He might be checking the windows. Emma, get away from the windows. Go upstairs and hide in the bedroom. What about you? I'll wait here for the police, Emma asked in a trembling voice. Michael, you said this was related to your mother's death. What exactly is this? Michael answered while peering outside through a gap in the window. Mom didn't die by accident. And now we're being targeted. With these words, Emma's world changed completely. Dorothy's death wasn't an accident. And they were targets. The sound of a car engine could be heard outside. Police sirens were echoing from the distance. The man seemed about to leave but hadn't completely given up yet. Emma, go upstairs. Right now. Emma ran up the stairs while screaming in her heart. Why was this happening? What had happened to Dorothy? And why did Michael know about it? The sound of sirens was getting closer. However, Emma's fear didn't subside. Emma was looking down from the second-floor bedroom window, watching the police surround the house. The man in the black suit had tried to go around to the backyard but was discovered by an officer and surrendered with both hands raised. While police voices echoed, the man lay face down on the ground without resistance. When one officer carefully opened the black bag the man had been carrying, something was removed from inside. Emma rushed downstairs. Michael had opened the door and was talking to a detective. "Mr. Thompson, this man is a professional hitman," the gray-haired detective explained with a serious expression. "We found a gun and photographs of you and your wife among his possessions." Emma's legs shook. "Photographs of us?" The detective showed them the photos in evidence bags. They were taken last week, capturing the moment when the two were coming out of the supermarket. As if they had been under surveillance. "Why are we being targeted?" Emma asked in a trembling voice. Michael took a deep breath and retrieved an envelope from the living room. "I want you to see this." The detective and Emma looked at the letter Michael handed them. There was Dorothy's handwriting. "Dear Michael, if I die suddenly, please read this letter. I saw Jessica putting something in my food. At first I thought I was mistaken, but my recent poor health might be because of that. If something happens to me, don't come to the funeral. It's dangerous. Please protect my beloved son and Emma. Love, Mother." After reading the letter, Emma sank down where she stood. "Jessie? That can't be." The detective frowned. "When did you receive this letter?" "1 week before Mom died," Michael answered. "At first I thought it was Mom's imagination, but this letter was so specific. Why didn't you report it to the police?" Michael answered painfully. "There was no evidence. And to suspect my sister. But when Mom died, I couldn't ignore this letter's warning." The detective took out his cell phone. "I'll contact the hospital to re-examine Mrs. Dorothy Thompson's body, including toxicology tests." Just then, another detective came to report the results of the man's interrogation. Detective Dietrichs, the suspect, confessed. He was hired by Jessica Thompson to carry out a murder disguised as an accident at the funeral home. Emma listened in disbelief. An accident at the funeral home? The plan was to disguise it as a lighting equipment accident. If the brother and his wife died simultaneously, all the inheritance would go to Jessica Thompson. With the detective's explanation, all the puzzle pieces connected. Jessica had poisoned her mother, then tried to kill the brother and his wife to monopolize the inheritance. "About how much money are we talking about?" Emma asked. Mrs. Dorothy's house and savings total about $2 million. The main heir was her son Michael, while Jessica would receive a small distribution. Michael held his head. "My sister doing something like that? I can't believe it." The detective continued. "We also investigated Jessica Thompson's debts. From gambling and overspending, she had about $300,000 in debt. She was in a desperate situation. A call came from the hospital. Dorothy's blood test had detected trace amounts of digitalis. This was heart medication. But when consumed in large quantities, it acts as a poison that causes heart attacks. The digitalin appears to have been administered continuously in small amounts. It's estimated that it reached a lethal dose in the last few days." Emma said through tears. "Your mother knew she was being poisoned. But because she loved her daughter until the end, she couldn't report it to the police without conclusive proof." The detectives headed to the funeral home to arrest Jessica. Emma and Michael remained at home, facing this unbelievable reality. "Michael, if you had ignored your mother's warning," Emma said while trembling, "we would be dead by now, just like Mom." An hour later, the detective called. Jessica had been arrested at the funeral home. but she had resisted violently and shouted, "Why are you alive? Why didn't you die as planned?" I apologized that the arrest had to happen in front of the attendees. The detective apologized. However, urgent arrest was necessary to prevent destruction of evidence. Emma worried about the relatives. Dorothy's funeral was ruined. No, all the attendees understood the situation. In fact, they were moved by Dorothy's love in trying to protect her son and daughter-in-law until the end. That night, Michael and Emma quietly reflected on memories of his mother. "Mom tried to protect us until the very end," Michael said while looking at his mother's photograph. "Your mother knew we would be in danger, and yet she showed her love for family until the very end," Emma answered tearfully. The detective contacted them later, saying that detailed murder plans written in a notebook had been discovered in Jessica's apartment. Everything had been meticulously planned, from the mother's poisoning to the brother and wife's accidental death, and finally the inheritance. Jessica didn't know that her mother had realized she was being poisoned. Mrs. Dorothy's warning letter, written with her last strength, saved your lives. The hitman had been promised $50,000 in payment from Jessica. He had investigated the funeral home's lighting equipment in advance and planned to drop heavy lighting fixtures in a disguised accident. "If you had attended the funeral, you would have been killed for certain," the detective explained. "This man is a cold-blooded professional. He doesn't fail." Emma was once again grateful that her husband had believed his mother's warning and acted on it. If he had ignored the letter, neither of them would be here now. Jessica will be charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. She'll probably get life in prison. Michael and Emma, while devastated by this horrifying truth, felt surrounded by Dorothy's love. She had prioritized the safety of her son and daughter-in-law until her final moment. "Your mother protected us from heaven," Emma murmured. "That's right. Mom's love saved us," Michael agreed. That night, the two quietly offered prayers before Dorothy's photograph with renewed gratitude in their hearts. The sadness of losing a loved one and the gratitude for having their lives saved intertwined complexly in their hearts. 6 months later, Emma and Michael were organizing Dorothy's house. Jessica's trial had already ended, and she had been sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. At their final meeting in court, Jessica had screamed, "If only you two weren't around, I could have had Mom's love all to myself." At that moment, Emma realized painfully that there had been no love in her sister-in-law, only twisted possessiveness. "Emma, look at this." Michael took out a small diary from Dorothy's bedroom closet. The cover read my thoughts. Emma opened the diary and began reading the sentences written in Dorothy's careful handwriting. "I'm worried about Jessica's debts. But if I ask directly, she gets angry, so I can only watch over her quietly. I don't want to cause trouble for Michael and Emma, but if something happens to me, those two will be fine. True family is determined not by blood relations, but by bonds of the heart." Tears came to Emma's eyes. Dorothy had been thinking about all her family members until the end. Even knowing about Jessica's actions, she couldn't completely abandon her love for her daughter. "Your mother loved Jessica until the end too." Michael also read the diary and was moved by his mother's deep love. "That's just like Mom. No matter what happened, she continued to love her family." On the last page of the diary, this was written: "When I see Michael and Emma laughing happily together, I become happy too. These two can overcome any difficulty. My greatest treasure is this warm family bond." The two decided to sell Dorothy's house and start a new life in a new place. While this house held beautiful memories, terrible memories had also been carved into it. "How about Portland, Oregon?" Michael suggested. "My company has a branch office there, and Emma can work at a new hospital too." Emma nodded. "I want to live in a new environment while cherishing memories of your mother." 3 months later, the two moved to a small house on the outskirts of Portland and hung Dorothy's photograph in the living room. Emma began the habit of placing a single white rose in front of the photograph every morning. At their new workplaces, Emma and Michael practiced the true family love they had learned from Dorothy. When colleagues were in trouble, they offered help, and when there were lonely patients, Emma spent special time listening to them. "True family isn't determined only by blood relations," Emma told a new colleague, who nodded deeply. "The most important thing is the bonds of the heart, where people protect each other even at the cost of their lives." One Sunday morning, the two visited a nearby cemetery. There was a small gravestone with the inscription, "Beloved Mother Dorothy Thompson, a woman who lived for family love." Emma placed a bouquet of white roses while saying, "Mother, we're living well. We practice the importance of love you taught us every day." Michael also placed his hand on the gravestone. "Mom, thank you for protecting us until the end. We won't forget your love." The wind blew, and the petals of the white roses that had been offered danced in the air, as if Dorothy were saying thank you. Emma and Michael joined hands and continued walking toward their new life, with the confidence that they could overcome any difficulty together, carrying the true family love inherited from Dorothy in their hearts. The sadness of losing a loved one never completely disappears, but the love received from that person continues to live forever in the heart. Dorothy Thompson's love would continue to shine as beautiful light in her son and daughter-in-law's new life.